Naruto is a series laden with plot holes that are sometimes difficult to ignore. Ever since I watched the series, something stuck in my head that I couldn't stop thinking about, and it was shadow clones. Oh, how many hours I've thought about shadow clones and how absolutely broken they could have been, and how shamefully they were underutilized. This idea stuck with me throughout every episode, every problem Naruto faced, every battle he ever fought. The idea that Naruto could have easily been the strongest shinobi to ever exist from basically the onset of the show. So today we're going to resolve those childhood miseries, and we're going to turn Part 1 Naruto into the true god of shinobi that he deserved to be, by only changing one detail from the show. And we're going to do it all before the beginning of Shippuden. In this series, we're going to take an anime character, powerful or otherwise, dissect their moveset, power system, and the world they are in, and see how much more significantly powerful we can make them if they just use the tools available to them in logical ways. We're going to use Naruto as the case study example today, and Part 1 Naruto more specifically, because I don't want anybody thinking this is just going to be a Sage of Six Paths, Sage mode, scaling bonanza, because it's not. To start, we should probably break down our lowly jutsu and the test subject. We'll start with Naruto. Naruto is basically just an ordinary kid as far as technical prowess. He's definitely no Itachi, and if it weren't for his legendary lineage and circumstances of his birth, he would have just been fodder number 72 that Madara tore apart in the world. This guy. Fortunately for Naruto, he has two things going for him that'll make a huge difference. The first of which is being a host to a tailed beast, and specifically the Nine Tails Kurama. Additionally, a lesser known but insanely huge factor to consider, his last name, Uzumaki. The Uzumaki were known to have incredible life force energy and chakra reserves, being directly descended from Asura, one of the two sons of the Sage of Six Paths, and they were so powerful in fact that the rest of the world decided to turn on them and commit genocide, just because of how powerful they were. It's kind of insane. Hosting a tailed beast is a relatively common occurrence in Naruto as the villages vie for power. The process to create a Jinchuriki, or host, is relatively simple and can be broken down into steps. Two actually, but they are full of issues that we'll go into further later. The first step includes capturing a tailed beast, which is easier said than done, obviously, depending on which village is attempting to capture which beast. To this day, I still cannot fathom how the Mist Village, a village that only uses water style, or at least is really predisposed to using it, managed to capture the Three Tails, one of the three water-affiliated tailed beasts. That's like going into the ocean and bare-knuckle boxing a whale and expecting to win. And on that note, who in the Sand Village captured Shukaku? I just don't get it. Someone in the comments tell me how they did this, and don't just say her sealing techniques, because it took entire sealing squads in the Four Shinobi War just to see a resurrected ninja, and sometimes that didn't even work. Anyway, so you capture a tailed beast, find an unlucky and often unwilling participant, and pop the beast inside them using a sealing technique. Okay, now what, are we good? Is your village the most powerful in the shinobi world? Well, no. Depending on how proficient the seal is, how compatible the beast is with the host, and or how docile the personality of the beast is, you can still run into dozens of problems that all lead to the host dying and the tailed beast rampaging in the village. Great. So let's assume you actually capture a tailed beast, seal it in a host that it's either compatible with like B, or you seal the sucker in so tight it can't break free regardless of its disposition like in Naruto's case. And that took the sacrifice of one of the strongest ninja in the continuity, using one of the strongest techniques in the continuity, and that was only sealing half of the Nine Tails. By the way, Naruto only has half of the Nine Tails. Let's consider that as we go on a little bit further and see what he can do. So, you do all that and you have a successful, stable host for a tailed beast. Congratulations! Now what do you get out of it? Well, actually, in a manner of speaking, the reward does outweigh the risk, as it creates an incredibly powerful ninja with immeasurable reserves of chakra and the ability to manipulate their form partially or fully by taking the shape of the respective tailed beast, or to use chakra cloaks which provide the user with a varying degree of power boosts. All pretty solid for the low price of sacrificing the greatest couple in all of anime. Fight me in the comments if you disagree. Now in our case, we really only care about the huge chakra reserves that it gives Naruto. And if you're unfamiliar with the series, you're probably asking yourself, why chakra matters so much? So let me talk about it a bit. Let's take Kisame for example, a ninja referred to as the tailless tailed beast. He achieves absolutely staggering feats solely based on his immense and more or less unexplained chakra reserves. For reference, Shippuden Kisame has about 3 times the natural chakra reserves as Naruto appears to have to Neji's Byakugan, Well, I remind you, uses a lot of his chakra to subdue the Kyuubi. With that in mind, Kisame is able to turn an entire desert into a lake, defeat a partially mastered Jinchuriki who uses lava release, and casually throws out jutsu that match the 7th gate guy in sheer power and size. Kisame is an absolutely underrated beast, and he does all of this without Kekkei Genkai, a tailed beast, sage mode, no nothing, except for chakra. Okay, so now that we've established why chakra is so important, let's talk about the technique at hand, the Shadow Clone technique. As previously mentioned, was developed by Tobirama. The primary reason he developed it was to address the shortcomings of the regular clone jutsu, which basically just created illusions or copies of the user. The problem with the Shadow Clone technique lies in how much chakra it takes to use. Normally, only those of Jonin level can safely use it without the risk of dying of exertion. So much so that the version of the technique that summons multiple copies is forbidden due to how unsafe it is. Once summoned, however, these clones can be utilized with remarkable versatility, serving as decoys to divert the attention of an enemy, or hide the identity of the original whilst hiding amongst their duplicates. Beyond that, they all can use the same techniques that the original can, and weirdly enough, they can duplicate the items and whatever possessions were held at the time of the technique's activation. And while this final detail won't be extremely useful for our purposes, it does have some gigantic implications for other shinobi who we may touch on in a later video. Finally, and most importantly to this character study, when a clone disperses, all memories and experiences rush back to the original, and sync with their understanding of whatever it is they did or studied. That sounds kind of docile on paper until you realize that it absolutely isn't. So let's begin. And remember, we're going to do all of this before Shippuden begins. Naruto, an 11-year-old, steals the Forbidden Scroll of Seals and manages to teach himself a technique created by one of the most intellectually gifted Kage in the entire continuity. He then proceeds to learn and basically master the technique in such a way he was able to summon 1,000 clones without Kurama. We know this because the series is pretty clear about it. If Naruto isn't exhibiting signs of partial transformation, or we can see Kyuubi's chakra leaking out, he's not using it, especially at this point in the series. Later on, it could be argued, but that's mostly irrelevant for our purposes. So that's our baseline. We'll use 1,000 clones. Yeah, you heard me. 1,000 clones as the baseline. After Ruka-sensei reports back to the Leaf higher-ups that Naruto summoned 1,000 clones and didn't release the Kyuubi, normally the idiot adults who run Konoha would send him off to train like a normal kid for whatever reason. After they clearly showed they weren't interested in ensuring the son of the 4th Hokage, a man who sacrificed everything to ensure their safety, was treated well, or at the very least treated normally. So we're going to replace them with smart adults, or at the very least, normal, regular day adults who have likely used the Shadow Clone technique for most of their adult lives, and would realize that instead of having a vulnerable child hosting the Kyuubi and risking at any moment someone could walk into their village and either kidnap him or worse, they would rather have Kakashi begin training Naruto properly, instead of wasting time on the 2010 AMV poster. So Naruto and Kakashi would begin training the use of clones, and Naruto receiving back large quantities of information at once, at a slow and gradual rate so as to not fry his brain, which I think is a real concern. If he flooded his mind with too much information at once, there might be some risk to damaging his brain. Naruto masters the use of autonomously functioning clones and grows the scale of them from pairs to groups to dozens within the span of a few months. He spends his time reading, learning techniques, palling around with his friends, going on missions, training, and everything in between. This grows the ceiling of his skills substantially, not just by effectively compressing time through training with multiple instances of consciousness at once, but also by expanding his knowledge of the ninja world substantially. He'd not only grow in physical might, but also become far more intelligent. I mean, just imagine the things that you could accomplish in a day if you had 12 times the amount of working hours. I'd devote an entire clone just to procrastinating all day, so that part of me doesn't feel left out. With the use of all these clones, you may be asking what Naruto was actually doing with all this time. And I think it can be best summed up by him going around Konoha and training to master every technique that was available to him. Effectively, Naruto would join every other squad during their training and learn from everyone he could. Some clones would even be dedicated to just watching the training sessions, which for Naruto was sort of like watching film of an opposing sport team to really get an idea of their movement and tactics. In Konoha, he'd first learn to manipulate and control the 5 basic elements. From Asuma, he learned wind and fire. Obviously, Kakashi would teach him lightning and earth, and what little he knew of water. Then the rest would be up to Naruto and his teachers later on. Beyond the basic elements, Kurenai would teach him Genjutsu, and Guy would improve his Taijutsu and teach him Gates. I don't even want to talk about how game-changing the 8 Gates technique is, as of just yet, because it would probably invalidate the rest of the series. But let me just tell you that it's crazier than you have even imagined it would be. In this time, Naruto would also develop more of a relationship with Kurama, as Naruto is experiencing hundreds of hours each day and would mature much faster than any of his friends or comrades, and of course his canon counterpart. By doing so, he learned to become more empathetic in a way that would appeal to the Kyuubi in a shorter time frame, and probably develop a less volatile relationship with him overall. This is the extent of that for now, but later on it will be addressed. By this point, Naruto would outgrow Kakashi, of course, and Jiraiya would step in. In the canon, Jiraiya really had his work cut out for him, but this version of Naruto is more calculating, intuitive, and really on his way to becoming a Kage level as a 12-year-old child. So Jiraiya would immediately take Naruto to Mount Miyaboku, train him under the tutelage of himself, Shima, and Fukusaku, who would teach him the Rasengan, of course, improve his ability to use fire, wind, water, and earth jutsu. Naruto already can use hundreds of clones all the time, and has experienced the equivalent of 3 to 4 months multiplied by the number of active clones he uses on a weekly basis. That comes out to something like 20 plus years Naruto has experienced of life, as compared to his canon counterpart. So Sage Mode is literally a breeze. In simpler terms, Naruto has the body of a 12-year-old and the mind of an adult. Mastering Sage Mode is a huge milestone for Naruto because of how powerful Senjutsu chakra actually is. Senjutsu is an extremely potent mixture of 3 components: physical and mental energy, which make up normal chakra, and natural energy. These 3 components acting harmoniously create Senjutsu, which is leagues stronger than normal chakra and allowed Naruto to achieve incredible feats of speed, strength, and jutsu that can destroy entire mountains. I'd say Naruto spends no more than a month on Miyaboku because after the acquisition of Sage Mode, he once again accelerate how much time he was experiencing and how many clones were active, from a few hundred upwards to a few thousand. Sage Mode is that potent. So again, with some tablecloth math, Naruto is passing through at minimum 16,000 hours a day, or something like 2 years of experienced memories, training, and everything in between. That's at maximum capacity, of course, and sure, he needs to rest and recover on some days to replenish his chakra, but that won't be a problem for too much longer. It's important to note that Naruto ingeniously devised a method to keep his brain from frying, by dispersing his clones after a specific time has passed and summoning another one in its place. This was done to limit how much information any particular clone had to pass on to the network, and allowed information to constantly be poured in at a manageable rate. This also meant that with each clone dispersed, each of his other active clones would also be filled with that much more information, which created a feedback loop that took Naruto some time to overcome, which did limit his growth to some extent. After leaving Miyaboku as a mastered sage, Naruto would be then sent to Killer Bee in order to master his tailed beast, with who he had already progressed a relationship with considerably. With how the mindscape works between Naruto and Kyuubi, it wouldn't really matter how many individual minds were present, making this more or less the only point in the timeline that he progresses at the same rate as his canon counterpart. That said, we have to remember that while Naruto is 12 years old in body, he's effectively lived for decades and has gained the knowledge of someone like Jiraiya's age. Naruto would master Kurama Mode, the form that is unlocked when he and Kurama sync their hearts. And oh boy, is this a ridiculous power-up. We're sort of at the point now in the series where Naruto no longer receives any other huge power-ups, other than the Sage of Six Paths power and Baryon later on, which I don't think he'd ever consider using. And we're probably at the point in the timeline that Sasuke leaves Konoha, still before the time skip, and Naruto is without a doubt the strongest shinobi currently alive, will ever be alive, and has ever existed. So instead of stacking multipliers any further, I want to step back and discuss what kind of monster we've created, just by Naruto using his most iconic jutsu in a more intelligent and logical way. To start, Naruto has trained extensively for effectively a few decades, has mastered all 5 basic elements, genjutsu, and can compete with the likes of Guy and Lee in just raw technical taijutsu ability. He'd also probably learn medical ninjutsu and pretty much everything that would come his way. Naruto has cataloged hundreds of jutsus that would make his fighting style unpredictable and absolutely devastating. Primarily, I think he would use the ability to detonate his clones, using either shadow clone variants or elemental ones depending on the matchup. And normally these explosions are already quite large. We're talking about someone who can literally create thousands of clones at this point, so if he really wanted to, Naruto could nuke anything or anyone just by summoning some clones and walking towards his enemy. This is all not taking into account Naruto's modifiers that add insane multipliers to every aspect of his skill set, including Kurama Chakra Mode, Sage Mode, and Gates. By itself, Kurama Mode would completely invalidate every challenge until Jubi Obito or Madara. With just the basic use of this form, Naruto appears so fast that he resembles the fourth Hokage, who literally traveled instantaneously. And Naruto's basic version of this transformation is that fast. Beyond that, in the second stage, he can create a chakra avatar of the Kyuubi, shoot continuous Biju bombs, and stop Madara's Susanoo swords with just his hands. It's insane, and effectively unbeatable at this stage in the show, where the strongest villain was literally Kimimaro, bless his sick and dying heart. And we haven't even talked about the 8 gates, and it really needs to be discussed, due to an incredible interaction that would be unique to this version of Naruto. The 8 gates technique does not simply give your body access to its full potential. It's a technique that effectively unlocks the body's natural limiters and how much chakra can be processed by the brain at any one time, from a meager 20% to upwards of 100% with the final gate of death. Now, the important factor to consider is what it's limiting: chakra. And as we've discussed throughout this entire video, chakra is king, and Naruto is the king of chakra. Now, we don't necessarily know if Senjutsu chakra would interact with the 8 gates in a 1-to-1 like regular chakra. I don't really see a reason why it wouldn't. It effectively functions as Chakra 2.0, so for the purposes of this video, we will assume that it will work with gates. Now, we've only ever seen like 4 characters use gates in the series, and their gimmick is that they aren't really good at controlling chakra, nor do they particularly have a large amount of it. And still, we see with the power of the gates open, Guy is competing with some of the most formidable shinobi in the entire world, whilst they were using literal god powers. Our version of Naruto is both a container of near infinite chakra and someone who has effectively reimagined what is possible with chakra control. So whatever we saw Guy do at the 8th gate, which were literally reality-bending kicks, Naruto is pushing that notion and probably punching through the fabric of reality and blowing up celestial bodies with just the strength of his punches. And Shinigami forbid we even consider what Naruto can do with ninjutsu. This isn't even accounting for the fact that every day, if Naruto decides to summon as many clones as he can, which can be upwards of 10,000, he can realistically, in a normal waking day of 16 hours, experience 160,000 hours of training, learning, refining, battling, whatever he wants. That's 20 years compressed into a single day. Already, Naruto can create a situation that outclasses the hyperbolic time chamber in efficiency by 10 times, without actually aging forward physically. Naruto also is an incredible intellect, likely having more raw knowledge than anyone that comes to mind. He's a tactical genius, having studied every combat style, ninjutsu, and Kekkei Genkai. He virtually has a Sharingan himself. And if you thought he was great at talk no jutsu before, imagine if he figures out who Obito is from the onset and talks him off that Madara gaslight ledge. He's also really resistant, if not immune to genjutsu, barring Tsukiyomi of course, and Kodo Matsukami, given that Kurama has the ability to break him out of any genjutsu, much like Yuki does for B. And let's be honest, I doubt anyone is fast enough to seal Naruto in any meaningful way, if that was ever a consideration. I don't really think there's much beyond that point, and the story implications are obviously quite huge, invalidating every major plot point for the rest of the series, all with just one change. Naruto would likely unify the planet under one banner and optimize the future of the shinobi world, as a 13-year-old child. And that's it. I think we accomplished what we set out to do, breaking the Narutoverse wide open with a singular, obvious change. So yeah, if you like this style of content where we optimize a character, let me know by hitting the like button and subscribing. It really helps. Thanks.